He hadn't slept in days. His eyes were exhausted, but his mind was in a complete state of alert. Daniel, the prophet captive in Babylon, knew something bigger was coming. And that night, as the wind whistled between the stone walls, a presence cut through the veil of reality. A celestial being with the brilliance of lightning and eyes like burning torches appeared before him. But what was revealed in that vision was too terrifying to fully comprehend. It wasn't just about earthly kings or empires that would come and fall. No. It was something that escaped time, something that would echo throughout the confines of history until it reached our present. And now, after more than 2 millennia, the signs are beginning to emerge with alarming clarity. Many ignore it, many scoff, but few can see what is really happening before our eyes. Daniel saw a time of trouble so great as had ever existed since the nation existed. And he talked about men running to and fro, about the increase of knowledge, about seals being opened and revelations being released. The question is, has time run out? Now look around. Wars, spiritual confusion, false teachers, artificial intelligence gaining consciousness, signs in the sky, earthquakes, famine, moral decay. Could all of this be connected to what Daniel saw? Or is it a coincidence that even scholars themselves are returning to the writings of this prophet to try to decipher the chaos into which the world has plunged? In this video, you will see what no one wants to show you. Let's explore Daniel's final prophecy and reveal why what he saw is starting to happen now. But be careful. After hearing this, you will never be the same, because there is no escaping the truth when it knocks on the door. Imagine having access to a message so powerful that if you truly understand it, it can completely change your perception of what is happening in the world right now. A message encoded by God, delivered through visions, seals, and numbers that confused even the greatest scholars of history. This is Daniel's prophecy. We're not talking about vague symbols or parables open to interpretation. We're talking about dates, events, and figures that coincide eerily with current events. But why was this prophecy sealed? And why now, at this exact moment in history, does it seem to be opening up before us? In a world dominated by distractions, ideologies, and manipulations, few people really stop to examine what was said by one of the Bible's greatest prophets. Daniel not only predicted the rise of empires such as Babylon, Persia, Greece, and Rome. He saw the end time. He spoke of the coming of a ruler who would change laws, persecute the saints, and try to erase all that is holy. He spoke of symbolic beasts of horns, of kingdoms that fall and rise, of an approaching judgment. Now stop and think. Why have these texts been preserved for more than 2,000 years? Why do these words still resonate so loudly? Are they not for a specific time? A time like this, a time when eyes need to be opened, when discernment becomes a weapon and silence becomes complicity. If you're watching, have you ever felt like there's something wrong in the air? Ever get that feeling that we're on the brink of something big, something prophesied but ignored? You are about to dive into a journey that goes far beyond curiosity. It will challenge your beliefs. It will confront what you think you know about the spiritual and physical worlds. It will reveal connections between Daniel, Revelation, and the days in which we live. But before proceeding, I ask you, are you ready to discover what is really happening behind the curtains of time? Are you prepared to face the fact that perhaps the prophetic clock has run its course? While the modern world takes great strides towards innovation, connectivity, and globalization, behind this curtain of progress, an ancient reality begins to unfold in a disturbing way. A forgotten prophecy, recorded more than 2 millennia ago, begins to fit together piece by piece like a puzzle that finally reveals the hidden image. The book of Daniel, one of the most enigmatic prophetic texts in the Bible, speaks of empires that would rise and fall, of alliances that would shake the earth, and of heavenly signs that would precede a time of tribulation like never before. But the most disturbing, Daniel's last prophecy, the one that he himself could not understand, is being fulfilled before our eyes. In chapter 12 of the book of Daniel, we find the prophet already elderly, weakened by the weight of the visions he witnessed over the years. He is no longer talking to kings or interpreting emperors' dreams. Now he is before a glorious angel on the bank of a river, listening to words that would seal the fate of humanity. "Close these words and seal this book until the time of the end," says the heavenly voice. But what exactly was sealed? And why? This is where the mystery begins to intensify. Unlike previous prophecies, where Daniel saw golden statues, beasts with multiple heads, and horns dominating nations, now the focus is on time. 3 numbers are mentioned: 1,290 days, 335 days, and the breaking of the continuous sacrifice. And none of this seems to make immediate sense until we cross the borders of historical time and dive into the present. Some scholars, when analyzing these mysterious dates, noticed something surprising. They coincide with key historical events involving Jerusalem, the rebirth of Israel, and recent global tensions involving political, economic, and military alliances. The question that remains is, are we living within the final prophetic window that Daniel could not unveil? The events of recent years, global pandemics, intensification of conflicts between specific nations, and growing religious persecution, now point to a scenario that exactly mirrors the omens recorded by the prophet, but this is just the beginning. The escalation of revelations increases when we return to chapter 8, where Daniel speaks of a little horn who would exalt himself against the Prince of Princes, a figure that many interpret as a symbol of the Antichrist, the one who will rise in total opposition to the divine alliance. From here on out, every word of the text seems to have been written for our times. Corruption spreads in the name of peace. Leaders rise promising security, but bring destabilization, and eternal values are constantly distorted in the name of modernity. However, what is most intriguing is not just the fulfillment of the signs, it's the feeling of silent urgency. Time seems to be running out, as if we are trapped in a divine clock, advancing second by second toward an inevitable prophetic point of convergence. Daniel saw it, but didn't understand. Now, we see. But will we understand before it's too late? Imagine for a moment if Daniel himself were among us today, observing the newspapers, the headlines, the conflicts between nations, the advance of an increasingly centralized global system. Would he recognize in these events the same signs that he saw in the terrifying visions on the banks of the Tigris River? The answer is scary, because everything indicates yes. What's more, the prophecy that he didn't understand may have been written precisely for this generation. The angel told Daniel that the book must be closed until the time of the end, and that at that time the wise would understand. But what should they understand? The answer lies in the temporal codes and apocalyptic images that reveal themselves, layer by layer, to those who dare to look beyond the surface. When he mentioned the continual sacrifice being taken away and the abomination of desolation being established, was he referring to something literal or symbolic? This doubt echoes to this day, but recent events suggest an explosive interpretation. Continuous sacrifice, for many scholars, represents the legitimate and constant worship of God, which is being subtly withdrawn from modern society. Not by force, but by distraction. It has never been easier to ignore the spiritual. We are too busy with screens, with performance, with constant distractions. And meanwhile, A new altar is being erected. The altar of the ego, of modern idolatry, of the replacement of eternal principles with momentary pleasures. The sacred is being taken away, and something abominable is taking its place. Behind the scenes of global politics, we see figures emerging with charismatic strength never before seen. They don't talk about religion, but they promote artificial peace at any cost, a union of nations, a standardization of currencies, a centralization of power. Daniel saw this and called this period a time of trouble such as there was not since there was a nation until that time. And the most amazing thing, he saw that this time would be brief but intense, a period where many would be purified and others deceived. Observe the current scenario, the increase in digital control, the tracking of activities, the siege against values considered outdated. All of this forms the perfect stage for the arrival of a world leader who promises order in the chaos. But this leader, messianic in appearance, could be the same one Daniel saw in his vision as the horn that magnifies itself, persecuting the saints and changing times and laws. But the question that echoes loudest at this moment is, why now? Why are these prophecies gaining new strength precisely in this decade? Because prophetic time is converging. The countdown is no longer a theological concept, it is a pulsating reality. And she is being ignored. There is something moving in the shadows, a subtle but real reorganization of the global spiritual and political landscape. The time that was sealed is being revealed, and the pieces of the prophetic puzzle are falling into place in frighteningly precise ways. But there's more, much more. The prophetic clock is not just ticking, it is accelerating. The question few ask themselves is, what if what Daniel saw was not just for his time, but a coded message for this specific generation? A connected, technological, but spiritually dormant generation. A generation where information circulates at record speed, but the truth remains hidden. Daniel had disturbing visions. He saw 4 great kingdoms rise from the earth, each with frightening characteristics. But what few realize is that, according to many scholars, these kingdoms are not just historical events. They are spiritual patterns that return cyclically. The last of them, the most terrible, is described as a ferocious animal, incomparable to the previous ones. It devours, crushes, and destroys everything it encounters, and represents the pinnacle of global domination. This 4th animal, which many associate with the Roman Empire, appears to have never been truly destroyed. He was injured, but survived, and today, in the 21st century, we are witnessing the attempt at a new continental union, a unified financial system, an emerging digital army, and a structure that projects beyond any nation, something supranational, global, invisible. But Daniel saw more. He saw 10 horns, leaders or nations that would give power to a single figure. And this figure, according to the prophecy, will speak words against the Most High, persecute the saints, and try to change times and the law. Is this symbolic, literal, or both? Look around, laws are being reformulated, ancient concepts are being erased in the name of progress. Everything seems to be moving towards one point, absolute control. And for this to happen, chaos is necessary. Wars, economic crises, pandemics, environmental threats. Fear is the key that opens the door to mastery. And this dominion is what Daniel saw as the time of the beast. But the scariest is yet to come, because Daniel mentions a specific period. Time, times, and half a time. 3.5 years. A prophetic interval that also appears in the Apocalypse. A time where everything will be tested. A time where faith will be refined like gold. A time where the righteous will shine like stars, but the deceived will plunge into deep darkness. Can you feel it? It's not just a theory, it's an echo from the past, a warning that has spanned centuries and that now pulses like a prophetic siren. Daniel's time was not the end, it was the beginning of the end, and now all the gears are in motion. But there is a key, a clue hidden between the lines of the prophecy, a secret that could change everything, and that was left on purpose for those who seek it. And it is exactly this secret that we will reveal in the next part. Daniel's prophecy, when unveiled, is not just a warning of cataclysms and destruction. It points with precision to a moment of change, a change that crosses the corridors of history and reaches us with a clear message. We are not prepared for what is to come. At the center of Daniel's vision is a cosmic battle, the kingdom of God against the forces of darkness. It is not a battle of swords and shields, but of spiritual power. He saw a small horn, which emerges from among the 10 horns, a charismatic and powerful figure capable of deceiving and manipulating. He would be described as the Antichrist. But that expression is not just an identity, it is a system of control. A charismatic leader who, with promises of peace and quick solutions, will seduce the nations. He will bring a false order, an apparent stability. But behind that, he will be imposing a regime of spiritual totalitarianism. But what makes it even scarier is the way Daniel describes the transformation of this power. Unlike other kingdoms that fall in physical battles, this power, this little horn, appears to grow and dominate, not by military force, but by deception and manipulation of the human essence itself, the desire for peace, security, and prosperity. He will take over the heart and mind, controlling, distorting the truth, and leading many into error. This is where the prophecy takes an even more unsettling turn, an invisible invasion where control will not be physical, but mental. The world is already experiencing a digital transformation where human identity is being redesigned. AI, surveillance, information control, and manipulation of the masses are no longer conspiracy theories. They are everyday realities. The digitalization of society is the key to this dominance. The unified global system that Daniel predicted begins to take shape. Central banks, digital currencies, a huge surveillance network, and a supranational governance system where everyone will be monitored. The issue of the mark of the beast is closer than we think. No longer a microchip, but the introduction of digital financial systems that demand total submission. The mark that Daniel saw could actually be a digital pattern of behavior, where your choices, actions, and even your faith would be controlled by a highly advanced AI system. Daniel's words echo more and more loudly. Power was given to him to wage war against the saints and to overcome them. This war will not be a conventional war, but a spiritual and psychological war. They will not just be soldiers on the battlefield, but millions of individuals who, without realizing it, are being prepared for a great war against their own souls. But there is still a light at the end of the tunnel. Daniel not only revealed the horrors, but also the signs of hope. He speaks of an eternal reign, a dominion of justice, peace, and righteousness that will be brought about by a messianic figure, the Son of Man, the one who will come to restore everything that was lost. And this hope is not found in external symbols or figures, but in the inner strength of faith that remains intact, even in the face of adversity. The great battle between good and evil, between the false and the true, will be fought within each one of us. And the crucial question is, are you prepared? Now Daniel's prophecy leaves one last warning. The recent times, these are not just a series of catastrophic events, but the time of a fundamental choice for everyone. In every decision, in every act, you are aligning yourself with the kingdom of light or the kingdom of darkness. What you choose will be the key to your eternal destiny. The countdown is closer than ever, but as time runs out, the last word will be given, and it will not come from men, but from God Himself. He will determine when the end of everything will be in the beginning of something much bigger. Now the real question is, how will you react? when the clock finally strikes? The answer often lies in small, everyday choices. And what else did Daniel leave behind in his prophecy? There is more to be revealed, but the last part of this journey can only be revealed at the right time, when time really runs out. What happens when the clock runs out? When does Daniel's last prophecy come true? The impact of all this goes beyond the physical. It reverberates in our soul, in our deepest values, and in the future of our civilization. The revealed truth is that the end of times is not just a series of apocalyptic disasters, but the climax of a spiritual battle that will determine the fate of all humanity. In Daniel's vision, he not only described the emergence of an evil leader and the rise of a global empire, but also the duration of suffering, the constant oppression of the righteous, and the attempt to erase true faith from the face of the earth. In a world where the truth is constantly being distorted, those who seek the light will be forced to battle an increasingly heavy and intense darkness. However, the prophecy also makes it clear that this fight will not be in vain. Victory, in the end, will be kingdom of God, which will manifest itself in a glorious and unquestionable way. This is where the last piece of the puzzle comes into place, the final restoration. Christ's victory will be the answer to all the uncertainties surrounding the end times. Daniel envisioned a new heaven and a new earth, where justice, peace, and holiness will reign forever. The kingdom that he saw, with the arrival of the Son of Man, will be immutable, eternal, and governed by absolute truth. As the world prepares for this imminent end, many are blind to the signs. The mark of the beast, which seemed like a distant concept, is coming closer and closer, not just as a physical sign, but as a digital identity that will define who you are and what you stand for. It will no longer be a question of where you live or how you dress, but of how you think and act. Control will no longer just be over your material possessions, but over the control of your mind itself. Here, the worshippers of the system, those who accept the Antichrist's manipulation, will be promised security and prosperity. But at what cost? They will exchange their souls for temporary peace, while the righteous will have to resist the system, maintaining loyalty to God, even in the face of persecution. The great division of humanity, however, will be between those who accept this dominion and those who remain faithful to God's calling. Only the chosen, those who maintained unshakable faith and resisted the calls of temptation, will be the ones who will be saved. The spiritual battle between light and darkness will be more and more intense, but the last act, the last movement, will be God's direct intervention, who will descend to earth to destroy evil and establish an eternal government of justice. But how do you position yourself in relation to this? Daniel's prophecy is not just a distant narrative of a distant future, but a present challenge: how to live as the world approaches this great moment. The choice of how to react is yours. Each of us is called to take a stand, to decide which side we will be on, the side of truth or the side of lies. The end of everything will be both a separation as a unification. The separation will be between the righteous and the wicked, between those who accepted the global system and those who resisted. But there will also be a final unification of the faithful who will be united in the kingdom of God, where there will be no more pain, suffering, or separation. Daniel concludes his vision with a word of hope for those who remain firm in their faith. But the wise will shine like the brightness of the firmament, and those who lead many to righteousness, like the stars, forever and ever. This promise is the key to understanding the purpose of the struggle. It is not just a fight for our own salvation, but a fight for the salvation of others, for the spread of truth, for the preservation of light in an increasingly dark world. Therefore, the end of times is not just the closing of one era, but the beginning of a new one. an era of justice, of divine reign, where the truth will finally be revealed and triumph over the lie. For the righteous, the reward will be glorious, while for the wicked, perdition will be eternal. Now, as the clock ticks down, the last question remains. Where will you be when the end really comes? The choice is yours. The prophecy is being fulfilled before your eyes. The decisions we make today will define our eternity. As the end of times approaches, tension on the world stage reaches a point of no return. Daniel's prophecy, one of the most complex and impactful in the Bible, finally begins to unfold before our eyes. You last days, described as a time of great anguish, are now in full view. But what many don't realize is that as the world prepares for chaos, there is something greater at stake. The Antichrist, the central figure in Daniel's vision, appears as the leader of a global system that promises prosperity, but is, in fact, the precursor to the greatest deception in history. Under his leadership, all the elements of the modern world, technology, economics, politics, begin to come together into one total control agenda. People's decision-making power is slowly being taken away, with digital systems increasingly integrated into everyday life, creating a surveillance state unprecedented. Meanwhile, the fair, those who refuse to submit to the system, face relentless persecution. The marks of the beast, a symbol of loyalty to the world empire, begin to be imposed, and the pressure to accept the system is intense. Fear and doubt are widespread. But there is one crucial detail that most people miss: the resistance is an option. Daniel, in his vision, sees not only the dominion of the Antichrist, but also the God's reaction. At a decisive moment where it seems that evil will triumph, God intervenes directly and decisively. At the height of spiritual warfare, divine intervention will restore justice, overthrow the evil empire, and re-establish the truth that had been distorted for centuries. The fight that is going on at this moment is spiritual and physical, and confrontation is inevitable. The Antichrist has its followers who believe that the system will bring them salvation. They are deceived for the false promise of peace and prosperity. But on the other hand, the chosen ones who maintain their faith in God have a different view. They know that true peace will only come when evil is defeated and truth prevail. The turning point occurs when the fair finally come together in one last effort to maintain the loyalty to God and prevent Satan's total domination on earth. The signs from heaven begin to manifest as predicted in Daniel's prophecy. The sky opens, and the Son of Man appears, coming in glory to combat the forces of evil. It is at that moment that the truth will be revealed to everyone, and judgment will be made. For the world, this is the final climax of the entire story. The battle that has been waged for millennia between the forces of good and evil finally reaches its climax. In a stunning turn of events, those who believed in the evil system, the followers of the Antichrist, they begin to realize the error of their choices, but it is already too late. The kingdom of God is established with glory and power, and all the kingdoms of the earth are judged. The Antichrist and his followers are defeated, and the victory of Christ is proclaimed. This is the decisive moment, the climax, where everyone's fate is sealed. The battle between light and darkness, good and evil, is resolved once and for all. For those who follow God's truth, the reward will be eternal and glorious. But for those who gave themselves over to evil, the eternal perdition awaits them. This is the culmination of Daniel's prophecy, the final revelation that although evil held sway for a time, God will always have the last word, and the final triumph will be yours. In the end, he will establish his eternal kingdom, where peace, justice, and truth will reign. Now, as the battle intensifies and the signs become unmistakable, you need to ask yourself, where will you be? When will this spiritual war culminate? The decision is in your hands. The time is running out, and the clock is about to chime the last second. After the climax of a grandiose spiritual confrontation, the battle between good and evil comes to an end. The kingdom of God is finally established, but the struggle was not without consequences. Those who choose to follow the Antichrist system and the false promise of security and prosperity face final defeat. There is no longer any escape for those who have given in to the deceptive power of evil. The Antichrist and their forces of oppression are crushed under the weight of divine judgment. It's no longer a question of waiting. The judgment of all nations, peoples, and individuals is now an inescapable reality. The wicked who worshipped the beast and refused God's truth now meet their fate. The Antichrist's promises of a perfect government, of a new world, reveal themselves as the greatest deception in human history. Those who gave themselves to him face eternal perdition in an abyss of endless suffering. But for the righteous, the God's chosen faithful, victory is complete and absolute. They are welcomed into eternal kingdom where the peace of God reigns, without the presence of evil or pain. Daniel's words, which initially seemed to be just warnings of a bleak future, are now seen in their entirety as a message of hope for those who remain steadfast in the faith. The kingdom of God is no longer a distant promise, but a present reality, inaugurated with the defeat of evil. In the heavens, the glory of God manifests itself in its entirety. The vision that Daniel had in his prophecy, with a Son of Man coming in power and glory, it is accomplished. God's truth is revealed to all nations, and all hearts are confronted with the choice they have made. Everyone will be rewarded according to their actions, and finally, the justice will be done. With the defeat of evil and the victory of God, humanity begins to experience what has been promised since ancient times, the restoration of creation. The world is renewed, and all things are made new. There is no more pain, no more crying, no more suffering. A true peace reigns, no longer as a distant hope, but as a palpable reality. God begins to dwell with his people, and together they live in harmony. The tensions and conflicts that have marked the history of humanity finally come to an end. The victory of Christ, it will resound throughout eternity, and all who were under the power of the Antichrist are freed from the slavery of sin and death. The light of God now, it shines unhindered, and those who were in darkness can finally see clearly. Daniel, in his prophecy, not only predicted the destruction of the evil empire, but also announced the arrival of a time of redemption and restoration for those who remained faithful. He saw a glorious future where evil would be eradicated and God's truth would become the foundation of a new era. At this point, when we look at the latest events of human history, the question is no longer about what will happen, but about where we are in our own spiritual journey. A decision time. It is in the hands of each of us. The time is running out, and the choice of who to follow becomes more urgent than ever. It will no longer be possible to make a choice without consequences. The kingdom of God. It has already arrived, and those who refuse to enter will live with the weight of their choice forever. Now, as in one last great alert, the final message of Daniel's prophecy becomes clear. God's victory is not just a matter of the future. It has already begun and is happening before our eyes. The end times are here, and the choice to be part of the kingdom of God or be consumed by the forces of evil is yours. Time is up. The question is, are you ready? As the curtains on divine history close, Daniel's vision of the end of times. It is not only a warning about what will happen, but also a personal invitation. The outcome he describes challenges us to reflect on our own lives, our choices, and above all, our position before God. History is far from just an ancient narrative. It is happening before us, here and now. As the prophet Daniel saw, the kingdom of God, it's closer than we imagine. The spiritual battle between good and evil is not something distant. It happens every day, in every decision we make, in every thought and in every act of faith. Have you already chosen your side? Are you aware of the responsibility you carry in your hands, the responsibility to accept or reject the transforming power of God? Daniel's appeal is clear. Don't wait for the future to make your decision. Time is not on your side. Daniel's prophecies point to a definitive destination, and they call us to act now. The kingdom of God is not something that will happen only after a distant judgment. It is already taking place in our hearts, in our daily choices. Every decision we make, whether to live by the truth or succumb to the Antichrist's lies, has eternal implications. The final judgment, what Daniel describes, is not just about what will happen to nations or empires. He is, in fact, a call to spiritual awakening, guys. God is inviting you to reflect deeply on your path. The future is not something that will come without warning. The future begins now, the moment you decide who you will serve. Now, as we close this journey with Daniel's prophecy, the crucial question is, what will you do with the knowledge that time is running out? What will you do knowing that, like Daniel, the future of humanity is being decided moment by moment? The choice is in your hands. Time, as prophesied, is passing, and the opportunity to enter the kingdom of God is now. Daniel saw what others could not see. He didn't just predict a distant future. He gave us a glimpse of the present spiritual reality, where our daily choices have eternal weight. Are you ready to face this reality? The time to choose is now. God's light already shines upon the world, but you must decide whether you want to walk in His light or hide in the darkness of deception. The kingdom of God. It's within your reach, and you don't have to wait any longer. Jesus invited each of us to follow Him, and the decision to do so now is more urgent than ever. The kingdom is here and now, and it is waiting for you.